Hello and welcome to the video. Now I like 4-inch quads. This is the latest one that we'll be looking at in this particular video. This is the Foldape4 and that probably gives you a bit of a hint of one of the tricks that it has. Yes, the arms fold up. But the 4-inch quads, in my experience, tend to have more of their DNA from their smaller brothers and sisters, the 3.5 and 3-inch quads, than they do the 5-inch quads and bigger, in that they tend to be more designed around keeping down the weight and efficiency rather than out and out flying. And this also has a couple of other tricks up its sleeve. It has foldable props, so this absolutely will fold down into a nice little size. But it'll also give a reasonable flight time because the top deck is pretty large and they recommend about a 3S 1150 mAh battery for it. However, I've been flying mine without an action camera on the biggest battery that I could get to fit, which was a 1500 mAh battery, and sadly I'm not getting quite what was advertised, the 20-minute flight time that's advertised on the website. I'm getting between 8 to 10 minutes depending on how aggressively I fly. At that weight, 249 grams with that battery, that's probably about as heavy as I'd want to make it as well. Heavier than that, I think you'd start to suffer from sluggish response from things like the throttle. But using a smaller lighter battery would allow you to add a small action camera on the nose, something like a Runcam Thumb Pro or something, and capture your flight in 4K too. Now, as I've just said, the big trick, of course, with this is that this 4-inch Foldape4 from DarwinFPV is foldable, and with those props as well being foldable too, it means that it does go down to a relatively small size. It would actually fit in a baggy pocket. Now they're claiming that you can get this easily under 250 grams, which I would agree with. Mine is 249 grams with the battery that I've been using, but they're claiming it can fly for about 20 minutes using an 1150 mAh 3S battery, and using something like an 18650 battery, you're going to get about 30 minutes out of it. I'm not getting anywhere near those flight times here, but maybe that's because I'm flying it in a slightly more spirited way. Maybe they're talking about 20 minutes of hovering rather than actual flying. The quad itself is reasonably rigid. They put lots of thought into how those folding parts are sandwiched together, and on mine here the arms are nice and rigid too, so that means that I've not used the two optional screws that go in the bottom that lock the arms into place, and I haven't had any issues with the arms moving out of position. In terms of the electronics inside that frame, there is an all-in-one flight controller, F411 processor, it's 15 amp ESCs, and it also includes Express LRS SPI connected as well, so that single board is doing an awful lot. That onboard Express LRS receiver is supplied with version 3 of Express LRS, so if that's what your radio is running, then you'll be able to bind to it relatively easily. GPS on the back is a DarwinFPV GM8 GPS, not the fastest GPS in terms of lock time, but it does the job. Once you've got a lock first thing in the day, then you're fine, but it can take a little while to get that lock of the first flight. Motors are 1504 3800 kV, and the propellers are Gemfan F4019 two-bladed foldable props in transparent grey. No spares in the box, sadly, so personally I would order a couple of spares just in case you are unlucky enough to catch one and snap it or damage it. The frame is that kind of wide X type, almost dead cat style. The wheelbase is about 168 millimeters. Arm thickness is 4 mil, and they reckon the maximum horizontal speed is 105 kilometers an hour. It is quite a nippy little beast. It's very fun to fly, and the recommended battery is a 3S 1150 mAh or a 3S 3000 mAh 18650 if you want to go for the maximum flight time. Weight of the quad, they reckon it's 124.3 grams, plus or minus 5 grams. This is what mine weighs here. So let's plug it into Betaflight and have a look at the settings. I have plugged it into the underneath using the micro USB cable. That's promising. Now, because the cable is on the bottom, obviously it appears upside down. Let me turn it the right way up and just check it's moving correctly. It is, that's good. A couple of things to note. The GPS has been identified. Let's just get expert mode turned on, jump into GPS. At the moment, see, this is the thing that I really miss with Betaflight compared to iNav. There's no information here about messages being received. We're just waiting for the GPS fix, and that could take a while because I'm actually doing this indoors. It would be good to see that the stuff was going on. But let's go through the rest of it. So ports, again, sadly, this is a F411 based flight controller, so we only have 2 UARTs. One of them is set for the GPS, and then the other one is set for smart audio using soft serial. That does mean UART 1 is available for the HD versions of this model. Configuration, 8K gyro, only a 1K PID loop frequency. CPU is running about 17%. Okay, that's fine. GPS is turned on. Power and battery looks like that. Failsafe is set for GPS rescue, which is good. The hover throttle is set for 1275, so who knows whether that's actually going to be right. Hopefully it is. Let's have a quick look at PID tuning. This is how it's set up. I'll do a dump and diff. I'll link them down below so you can have a look if you're interested. Receiver is going to be set for Express LRS connected via the SPI. That's saving us a UART, which is helpful with this older flight controller design. Again, down here in the bottom right hand corner is the bind receiver button. I'm going to do that after I've had a look and saved the Virgin setup. Next thing is modes. These are normally not great. Yeah, definitely. So we don't have a separate arm and mode switch. This is CRSF, so I will save it like this, but I would come in here, make sure that your channel 5 or your auxiliary 1, which is the CRSF arming channel, it's a binary thing, so you have that. I would set auxiliary 2 for your modes, and then have your flip over and other things on other things as well. It's odd to have it only set really for angle mode rather than horizon and stuff. GPS has got a lock now, so that's good. D-Shot 300 for the bits and pieces. On-screen display, again, this is an analog version that I have here. I'm going to come in and I'm going to clean this around. I don't want all this gubbins on the screen. Not really that bothered about it. Video transmitter. Again, this is the default, set for race band, channel 7, maximum power. The bits and pieces are loaded. So let me quickly do a dump and diff, and then I'll link below. Let's actually see what this thing flies like. In terms of flying, it is a lot of fun. Again, it needs a 3S battery to fly, an 1150 ideally. However, mine is a 1500 mAh pack. I'm using that instead of putting any kind of action camera on here, and that's coming out at 249 grams, so still below the 250 gram limit. And that means that my hover throttle has had to be adjusted for the GPS return to home. It's hovering about 1350, so I did need to make that tweak a little bit. I think keeping the weight below 249 grams is probably going to give you a nicer performance in terms of throttle response and getting in and out of trouble. I'm getting about 8 to 9 minutes of flying from that battery, flying in a fun way. I'm not doing hard 3D, I'm just zooming around, looking at the countryside, having a wonderful time. Some of it is flying really low at speed or going up and just exploring the local area. And that kind of flying, I'm definitely not getting the 20 minutes as advertised. Cadix Ant camera performance is exactly as usual. I am not a fan of the Ant. I do wish they would use another camera, and it's also an NTSC layout, which robs me of a few lines of on-screen display at the bottom too. Power levels are good, hovering at that 35% throttle, so lots of oomph to get you in and out of trouble, which means that it's very fun to fly. And when you are sinking a little bit closer to an obstacle, you can just blip the throttle and climb strongly to avoid it. It's not acrobatic levels of performance, but it's easily enough to have fun. Noise levels are about as expected. It's not super quiet. You can hear it from a distance, so even at the other end of the field, you can hear it whining away. When you give it full throttle, you can definitely hear it, but it's well below the sound levels that you'll get from a larger 5-inch quad with fixed 3-bladed props. The FPV footage that I'm showing you here is from one of my first ever flights, and you can see here a couple of things. This is a GPS lock. I waited about 5 minutes for the GPS to get a lock and then started flying. It can take a little bit of time, which is something that's frustrating. I would lock it as soon as you get to the field and then unplug the battery, and then hopefully the warm start will be faster. And the other thing as well, the battery cell detection isn't working particularly well. It's freaking out even though the battery is a fully charged 3S pack. So that's probably something that I'd recommend going and tweaking in the Betaflight setup. Flying is very smooth and sedate with enough punch to get out of trouble, but not enough for that hard acro. This, as expected, is a very fun explorer class model rather than anything else. So there's lots of things to like here. This again is another one of those fun 4-inch quads that I particularly like. It's offered in lots of HD options. I like that. Congratulations DarwinFPV for not falling for the DJI hype and offering it in different versions, including analog, which is the one I have here. I like the fact that it folds down into something that will fit into your pocket, and I like the fact they've also added those foldable props. That keeps it nice and compact. I really like the little carrying bag that it comes with too. That's a great way to keep it protected when you have it in something like a rucksack from the lens or something else getting scratched or damaged as you're climbing up to the place you want to fly. The quality of the build is very nice. The way that the carbon is finished and the way that all the screws are put in and the design, it's classic Darwin FPV. They do work to give you a lot of bang for your buck. And I like the fact that they've got that GPS on the back so that we have things like the Betaflight rescue mode, and there is the option underneath to use those 2 extra screws to secure those foldable props to stop them moving in the event of a crash or hitting something like a tree branch as you're flying around. However, there are a couple of things that I would draw your attention to. First and foremost is that Cadix ant at the front. I am not a fan of that camera. I keep saying this. I do wish they would use something else. I know lots of people are quite happy with them, but personally it feels to me like I'm flying with a layer of gauze in front of my eyes. And I'm interested to see that this is a 3S rather than a 4S model. Lots of the other 4-inch quads that I've tried here have been 4S, and that does help reduce the current draw and extend the flight time a little bit. This is a little bit more expensive than some of the other Darwin FPV models of this type, starting about $194.29 for this one. And there's also no spare props in the pack. I wish there'd been at least 1 or 2. Arms are nice and stiff, so they work fine without securing bolts, but I would have preferred some kind of latching mechanism, so as the arms clicked into place, there was a little plastic clip or something that held them there, rather than trying to mess around with a screwdriver or a hex driver and 2 screws in the field. If you drop any of that stuff into the grass, you're never going to see it again. Space is a little tight inside, so only some of the HD systems will fit. I think if you get this one with an avatar unit, it does come with a 1S avatar rather than one of the full sizes. There's no compass on the GPS at the back, which sadly means that there isn't an option to play with iNav on this, so unfortunately as an Explorer class that's a little bit of a limitation, but it's more there I guess to get the thing home in the event of an issue than it is to do autonomous flying, be able to do things like position hold. Onboard SPI receiver seems to work fine. It does mean that we keep one of the UARTs free for the on-screen display for things like the HD systems, and sadly there isn't any buzzer in here. I would have loved them to include some kind of buzzer which helps you find these things when they land in anything but ankle length grass. They just disappear. And you will have to address that little issue in the on-screen display, making sure that the battery cell count is detected properly. So in final summary, this is another nice quad from Darwin FPV, but there are things on here that you can see that made choices that's aimed at keeping down the price. Things like the F411 based flight controller, which iNav doesn't support now, and also is becoming a bit of an older technology, and using things like the Cadix ant, for instance. I would have preferred other choices. I love the idea of having folding arms on this with the folding props so they can just pop away in a pocket or in that bag that's there supplied. But I think that they've missed a trick by having some kind of fixing screws that are needed to hold that in place. Some kind of spring-loaded catch or 3D printed plastic piece or whatever that would hold the arms in place, I think would have made a lot of sense. For me, I've not bothered with the folding arms at all. I've been flying them just using the friction and it's worked great. But my thought process is if I went and got the screws out of the kit and actually screwed them into the 2 holes, then I probably wouldn't take them back out, which then means that the idea of a folding prop is kind of a waste of time then, isn't it? I may convert this one over to Walksnail as I'm really enjoying flying it, and potentially maybe upgrade the GPS to something that gets a little bit of a faster lock too. I'd like to see more detail on how these all-in-one flight controllers are wired up for the different versions, so that converting from something like this analog version to Walksnail HD0 or another system is a little bit easier too. Again, this isn't for racing or freestyle, but it's very fun for things like exploring and flying for longer than 5 minutes. I wonder if Darwin are going to make more pro-style versions, which are a little bit more expensive, but use higher grade electronics. It'll be interesting to see what they would do if they started making stuff like that, because I think this is a great quad, but potentially those electronic choices are the ones that will eventually mean you're going to want to upgrade or swap things relatively quickly. Thank you for watching the video. If you watch my videos and find them useful, then please take a moment to hit the like and subscribe button. It helps the channel a lot. If you really like what I'm doing here, you can become a Patreon and support the time I spend helping others and get access to lots of exclusive benefits. Link is in the video description. Remember that all the videos on the channel are organized into playlists, so you can easily use those playlists to find all the videos on a subject that you are interested in. Add Painless 360 to your searches on Google and YouTube, and it'll help you find my content for any particular topic. Thanks again for watching, and as always, happy flying.